I spent the night in the Appalachian Mountains. I wasn't alone. I don't know why I agreed to do it. Maybe it was the lure of solitude, the thought of disconnecting from the world for a night, or just plain arrogance. People talk about the Appalachian Mountains like they hold secrets, whispers of things ancient and unseen. I never put much stock in those stories. That was before I spent the night there. I had picked a spot deep in the wilderness, far from any marked trails. The sun was dipping below the horizon when I set up camp, painting the sky in deep hues of red and violet. The towering trees swayed slightly in the cool evening breeze, their long shadows stretching like skeletal fingers across the ground. It was peaceful, almost eerily so. I built a fire, the flickering flames pushing back the encroaching darkness. The only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl. I exhaled, letting the tension of the day melt away. Alone in the vastness of the mountains, I felt insignificant, a mere speck among ancient giants. That feeling changed when I noticed the silence. The natural symphony of the woods, chirping insects, distant howls, the rustling of unseen creatures, had stopped. The air grew heavy, thick with an unnatural stillness. I strained my ears, trying to catch even the faintest sound, but there was nothing. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a soft crunch, a footstep. I froze, my hands gripping the arms of my camping chair. It came from just beyond the fire's glow, in the dense wall of trees. I squinted into the darkness, but the flames cast dancing shadows, making it impossible to see clearly. Another step, closer this time. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The word felt swallowed by the silence, as if the forest refused to carry it. No response. I reached for my flashlight, my heart pounding in my chest. When I clicked it on, the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees. Nothing, just endless trunks and underbrush. Maybe a deer, I told myself. Maybe a raccoon scavenging for food. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I forced a chuckle, shaking my head. "You're psyching yourself out," I muttered, retreating to my tent. I zipped myself inside, the thin fabric suddenly feeling like my only defense against whatever was out there. The fire still crackled outside, but it no longer brought comfort. I lay still, listening, every nerve on edge. Then something tapped against my tent. It was soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. Tap, tap, tap. My breath hitched. It wasn't the sound of an animal brushing against the fabric. It was deliberate, calculated. A slow, rhythmic tapping. I clenched my fists, my mind racing. It could be the wind, or it could be something else. Summoning every ounce of courage, I unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. My fire was still burning, casting an amber glow across the clearing. The trees loomed beyond, their gnarled limbs swaying slightly. But nothing was there. I exhaled, relief washing over me. Then I saw them. Two pale, glowing eyes staring at me from the tree line. I slammed the tent shut, my pulse skyrocketing. No. I wasn't alone. I fumbled for my knife, clutching it with trembling fingers. My mind screamed at me to run, but run where? I was miles from civilization, swallowed by the endless wilderness. A shuffling noise, closer this time. I pressed my ear against the tent wall, my breath shallow. Then a voice, a whisper, barely a breath. "You shouldn't have come here." The words sent ice through my veins. My body locked in place, paralyzed by a fear so primal it rooted me to the spot. I wanted to scream, to flee into the night, but I knew in the deepest part of my soul, that if I unzipped that tent, if I stepped outside, I wouldn't make it until morning. And then, the fire went out. The darkness swallowed me whole. The fire's sudden extinguishing was like the forest itself had swallowed the light, leaving me trapped in suffocating darkness. The temperature seemed to drop instantly, an unnatural chill slithering into the tent. I clutched my knife tighter, my knuckles white, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Something was out there, something that knew I was here. I strained my ears, listening. The silence stretched on, thick and endless. Then, from the direction of the extinguished fire, I heard it, slow, deliberate footsteps crunching over dead leaves. Not the hurried scurrying of an animal, not the aimless drifting of the wind. These were human steps, or at least, they sounded human. They moved in a slow circle around my tent, measured, as if whoever, whatever it was studying me. My fingers trembled as I reached for my flashlight, careful not to make a sound. I clicked it on, aiming it at the thin tent fabric. The beam cast weak light through the nylon, but it was enough to see the silhouette of something standing just outside. Tall, unmoving, watching. A lump formed in my throat. The figure didn't shift, didn't breathe. It just stood there, pressing the silence down on me like a weight. And then, a second shadow appeared, and a third. Shapes emerged all around my tent, just beyond the thin fabric. Too many to count. They stood in absolute stillness, forming a circle. The footsteps had stopped, but their presence filled the air like a thick fog. I wanted to scream, to rip open the tent and run blindly into the night, but I knew better. I didn't know what they were, but I knew they wanted me to move. A low whisper slithered through the air, just outside my tent. "He sees you." My stomach dropped. The voice wasn't human. It was distant yet suffocating, like it came from the trees themselves. Then, all at once, the figures moved. The entire tent shuddered as hands, too many hands, pressed against it. Fingers trailed across the fabric, slow and deliberate, tracing the outline of my body inside. My breath hitched as I pressed myself against the back of the tent, every muscle in my body screaming to flee. The whispers came again, but this time, overlapping, dozens of voices murmuring at once. I couldn't understand the words, but they carried a warning wrapped in something far worse than malice. And then, silence. The pressure on the tent lifted. I sat there, paralyzed, waiting for the next horror to unfold. The seconds crawled by. I forced myself to breathe, counting in my head. 1, 2, 3. A sound erupted from the tree-line. A deep, guttural scream that didn't belong to any animal I had ever heard. It started low, then climbed into something high-pitched, unnatural, a wail that clawed into my skull. The figures around the tent didn't return, but I knew they were still there, hiding just out of sight. I couldn't stay. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I grabbed my bag, unzipped the tent in one violent motion, and bolted. The forest was pitch black, but I didn't stop. My flashlight bounced wildly as I ran, its weak beam cutting through the trees in erratic flashes. The moment I was outside, I felt it, an absence. The figures were gone. The oppressive stillness had lifted, but something was chasing me. Footsteps crashed through the underbrush, heavy and fast, moving just beyond my sight. I didn't dare look back. I didn't need to. I could feel it gaining on me. Branches clawed at my face, my arms, but I pushed forward, lungs burning. My mind screamed a single thought over and over. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Then up ahead, I saw it. Moonlight filtering through the trees, an opening. Safety. I broke through the tree line and stumbled onto an old, overgrown dirt path. My legs buckled, and I collapsed, gasping for air. The flashlight slipped from my grip, its beam landing on something ahead of me. A wooden signpost, half-rotted, barely legible beneath the moss and decay. I squinted, my pulse still hammering. The faded letters sent a chill through me. Turn back. Do not enter. And beneath it, carved in jagged, desperate scratches. He watches from the trees. A twig snapped behind me. I wasn't alone. I couldn't move. I was still kneeling in the dirt, my breath uneven, my mind desperately trying to process what I was seeing. The old signpost stood before me, rotted and forgotten, yet its warning carved deep into the wood sent an unmistakable message. He watches from the trees. A cold sensation trickled down my spine. The moment stretched out, thick with tension, as I slowly turned my head toward the sound behind me. The forest was a wall of darkness. My flashlight, lying on the ground where I dropped it, cast a weak, flickering glow against the trees. The shadows stretched and swayed, twisting in ways that didn't match the wind. Then, just at the edge of the light, I saw them again. Tall, impossibly still figures, barely distinguishable from the trees. But now I could make out their faces, or rather, the absence of them. Their skin was pale, almost gray, stretched too tight over elongated skulls. Their eye sockets were hollow voids, empty, and yet somehow watching. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my gut. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I was frozen, caught in their gaze, held by something far stronger than fear. Then, in unison, they tilted their heads. A slow, unnatural motion, as if studying me like I was something foreign, something they couldn't quite understand. The silence was unbearable. Then, one of them moved. Its limbs unfolded in a jerky, disjointed manner, as if it hadn't used them in centuries. It took a single step forward, and I heard it, a wet, cracking sound like joints popping back into place. That was enough to break my paralysis. I lunged for my flashlight, gripping it with white-knuckled desperation, and swung it toward the figures. The second the beam hit them, they disappeared, not like they ran or faded into the trees. They simply weren't there anymore. I scrambled to my feet, my head whipping around wildly. The forest was empty again, but I knew they hadn't gone far. The feeling of being watched still clung to me, thick and suffocating. I had to get out of there. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, desperately hoping for a signal. Nothing. No bars, no GPS, just a black screen taunting me with its uselessness. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising panic. I needed to think. I wasn't lost. Not completely. The path was old, but it had to lead somewhere. I just had to follow it, keep moving, and not look back. I took a deep breath, steadied my grip on the flashlight, and started walking. The trail twisted and turned through the dense forest, each step taking me deeper into the unknown. The farther I went, the more unnatural everything felt. The air was thick and stagnant, carrying a faint, metallic scent that made my stomach churn. The trees were changing too, tall, gnarled things with bark that looked almost burned. The deeper I went, the worse the silence became. No wind, no insects, no signs of life at all, just the rhythmic crunch of my footsteps against the brittle leaves. Then another sound. Footsteps, not mine. They were slow at first, matching my own, almost mocking me. I stopped. They stopped. I swallowed hard and took another step forward. The footsteps followed. A sick realization settled in my gut. They weren't behind me. They were beside me, somewhere in the trees, just beyond my vision. I didn't dare turn my head. I forced myself to keep walking, faster now, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I could hear them keeping pace, the sound always just on the edge of my hearing. And then, a whisper, soft, delicate, yet close enough that I felt it crawl against my ear. "We see you." I broke. I ran. The forest blurred past me, branches whipping against my face and arms, but I didn't care. The footsteps exploded into movement, chasing me, closing the distance faster than they should have been able to. I didn't know where I was running to, only that I had to get away. Then, up ahead, something emerged from the darkness. A structure, barely visible beneath years of decay and overgrowth. A cabin. I didn't stop to think. I lunged toward it, nearly tripping over the rotting porch steps as I grabbed the door handle and wrenched it open. I threw myself inside and slammed the door shut behind me. Darkness. My flashlight flickered, barely illuminating the dust-choked air. The cabin smelled of rot and damp wood, but it didn't matter. I was inside. I had a barrier between me and whatever was out there. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear. Nothing. No footsteps. No whispers. Just the sound of my own ragged breathing. I exhaled, finally letting myself believe, just for a second, that I was safe. Then, behind me, the floor creaked. I wasn't alone. The floor creaked behind me. I froze. The cabin was supposed to be empty. I had seen no other signs of life, no indication that anything had lived here for years. Dust hung thick in the air, disturbed only by my frantic entrance. But now, something else was here. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and turned around, my pulse thundering in my ears. The weak beam of light swept across the room, revealing warped wooden walls, shattered furniture, and a gaping black doorway leading deeper into the cabin. The air was stale, thick with the scent of rot. Then another sound, a faint dragging noise, like something heavy scraping against the wooden floor. It came from the darkened doorway. I swallowed hard. Every part of me screamed to run, to leave this place and take my chances in the forest. But I knew what was out there. I wasn't sure it was any better than what might be in here. I edged forward, the flashlight trembling in my grasp. The doorway loomed ahead, swallowing the light, as if the darkness itself was something alive. I reached the threshold and hesitated. The silence stretched, unbearable. Then, just as I was about to turn away, something moved inside the darkness. A shape, a figure, hunched and twisted, barely visible in the weak glow of my flashlight. And then, it turned its head toward me. A face, or something close to one. Skin stretched tight over a gaunt skull, the mouth hanging open in a grotesque, frozen gasp. Its eyes, black, hollow pits, bore into me, empty yet filled with something ancient and starving. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the rotting floorboards. The creature's head jerked unnaturally, its mouth widening as if it were trying to speak. Then, a whisper. So close, so wrong. You shouldn't be here. The words scraped against my mind, a voice without breath, without life. I bolted. I didn't think. I just ran, crashing through the doorway and back toward the front of the cabin. The walls groaned as if the entire structure were shifting, the air growing thick and suffocating. Behind me, the thing moved. Fast. I didn't dare look back. I lunged for the front door, yanking it open, and froze. The forest outside was wrong. The trees, once familiar in their eerie stillness, were now twisted, their trunks warped into unnatural spirals. The ground was slick with something dark, almost oily, and the sky, God, the sky, was no longer black but a sickly, pulsing red. The world outside the cabin had changed. And then, the whispers returned. Dozens of them. From the trees, from the shadows, from the thing in the cabin behind me. He sees you. He sees you. He sees you. My breath caught in my throat. The figures from before, the hollow ones, stood in the distance, their eyeless faces turned toward me. Their mouths hung open, but they didn't move. Then all at once, they lifted their arms and pointed. Not at me, at something behind me. I turned. The thing in the cabin was at the door now, its body hunched and twisted, its gaping mouth stretching wider than should have been possible. Its limbs shuddered, too long, too thin, as if they were still learning how to function. And then it crawled toward me. I screamed. Instinct took over, and I ran. I didn't care about the twisted trees, the pulsing sky, or the fact that the world around me no longer made sense. I just ran. Branches slashed at my face as I tore through the forest, my flashlight bouncing wildly in my grasp. Behind me, the thing chased, its movement jerky and erratic, but impossibly fast. The whispers grew louder, turning into a deafening chorus. He sees you. Then, up ahead, a light. Faint, flickering. A lantern? A fire? I didn't know, but I ran toward it with everything I'd left. As I broke through the trees, my foot caught on something, and I tumbled forward, slamming into the dirt. Pain exploded through my body, but I didn't have time to process it. I looked up and saw a man, an old man, standing beside a small, flickering fire. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, his eyes dark and knowing. He didn't flinch at my wild, desperate entrance. Instead, he simply shook his head. You saw it, didn't you? He murmured. I could barely breathe. What is? The old man exhaled, staring past me, into the darkness of the forest. You weren't supposed to come here, he said. Then, from the trees behind me, a single, wet, inhuman breath. The old man didn't move. The fire between us flickered, casting long shadows across his deeply lined face. His eyes, dark hollow, weren't fixed on me. They were locked on something behind me. A sickening realization settled into my bones. It was still there. The thing from the cabin. The thing from the trees. My breath came in shallow, trembling gasps as I turned my head ever so slightly, just enough to see beyond the edges of my vision. The forest behind me was wrong. The trees no longer looked like trees. Their bark was pulsing, breathing, shifting in ways that defied nature. And nestled within their twisted limbs, between the folds of darkness, something watched me. Not just one, many. Tall, gaunt figures with hollowed-out faces stood between the gnarled trunks. Their bodies were motionless, but I could feel them leaning toward me, drawn closer by something I didn't understand. And in the center of them all, the thing from the cabin, no longer crawling, no longer hunched. It was standing now, tall, towering, its mouth horribly wide, curved into something that might have been a smile if not for the absolute emptiness behind it. It wasn't breathing, but I could hear it, a deep, wet sound, as if something was dragging itself through me rather than around me. And then, it took a step forward. The old man finally moved. With a single, deliberate motion, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small, rusted tin. He opened it with shaking hands, revealing a handful of dark, crumbling powder. He threw it into the fire. The flames roared, turning from dull orange to an eerie, sickly blue. The moment the fire changed, a sound tore through the trees, a high-pitched, inhuman shriek that sent a shuddering wave of nausea through my gut. The figures in the woods jerked backward, their elongated limbs twisted violently, as if the very presence of the fire repelled them. Even the towering thing, the one with the gaping, endless mouth, stepped back, its form twitching, distorting like a corrupted image struggling to hold its shape. I wanted to run. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to bolt, to put as much distance between myself and whatever this was as possible. But the old man's voice cut through the chaos. Don't. My entire body went rigid. His eyes were locked on mine now, sharp and full of warning. If you run, it'll follow you. My mouth went dry. What are they? I stammered. The old man's face hardened, the fire's blue glow casting deep shadows across his skin. The hollow ones. His voice was low, grim. They don't have a name because they don't need one. They've always been here, watching, waiting. The fire crackled violently. The figures in the trees shifted, pressing themselves against the warped trunks, watching. You weren't supposed to see them, the old man continued. They don't like being seen. My head pounded. My thoughts swirled in a chaotic mess of fear and questions. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. His voice was clipped, urgent. Now they've marked you. And once they mark you... His eyes flicked toward the towering thing at the center of the trees. He follows. My stomach dropped. The shrieking had stopped. The whispers had faded. And yet, I could still feel him. I could still hear him. Not through sound. Not through sight. Through something deeper. Like he was already inside my head. You can still leave, the old man said suddenly. His voice was tight, measured, as if choosing his words carefully. But you have to listen to me. Exactly. No matter what happens. No matter what you hear. He locked eyes with me. Do not look back. A cold wave of dread crashed over me. They don't have eyes, he whispered, but they see through yours. My body shuddered with fear. Go. Now. I hesitated for only a second. Then I turned toward the forest. The trees stretched before me, dark and unfamiliar. I couldn't even tell which way I had come from, but I knew I had to move. One step, then another. The whispers returned. Low, hushed, almost pleading. Wait, come back. You're going the wrong way. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to turn my head. The whispers slithered through my mind, growing louder, angrier. Then a new voice. One I recognized. Help me. I nearly stumbled. That voice. It was my mother's. Please, it whispered, desperate, so real. Don't leave me here. My breathing hitched. My hand shook. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I forced my feet forward. The whispers turned to screams. Ragged, horrible shrieks of agony, of rage, of something far worse than death. The ground beneath me shifted, as if the very earth was trying to pull me back. I kept going. Then, a breath, right against my ear, wet, cold. I see you. A sharp, skeletal hand clamped onto my shoulder. My body locked up. Every part of me screamed to turn around. I nearly did. But then, the trees broke open. I burst from the forest, falling onto hard, rocky ground. The sky above me was black again, normal, no longer pulsing red. The whispers were gone. I gasped, my chest heaving. My body was trembling, so hard I thought I might pass out. I turned my head, and behind me, the forest was just a forest. Silent. Still. The twisted trees were gone. The shadows had vanished. There was no one there. No hollow ones. No watching figures. No he. Just an empty, endless expanse of Appalachian wilderness. I was alone, but deep inside I knew the truth. I had left, but he hadn't, and he was still watching. The end.